Hello and welcome to the book launch of Florentyna Leow's How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart. I'm Georgia Wall. I'm the publishing manager at the Emma Press, and I'm thrilled to be here with Florentyna and with author Polly Barton, who has very kindly accepted our invitation to chair the launch. In a moment, I will hand over to Polly and Florrie, who will speak for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open up to questions from the audience. So if there's anything you'd like to ask, please do type your question in the chat as we go along, and we will collect more at the end. The last thing from me is a very quick who's who. So the Emma Press is an independent publisher based in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham in the UK, founded in 2012 by Emma Diane Wright, with the goal of making literature and publishing as welcoming and accessible as possible. We publish poetry and prose for adults and children, and our most recent publication, hot off the press yesterday, is of course Florentyna Leow's How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart. Florentyna is a writer and a translator. She was born in Malaysia and lived in London and Kyoto before moving to Tokyo. Her work focuses on food and craft, with an emphasis on underreported stories from rural Japan, like English toast, a shrine dedicated to ice, and Japan's rarest citrus. She cannot go 5 minutes without thinking about food, and How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart is her first book. Polly Barton is a writer and Japanese translator based in Bristol. Her award-winning debut book, 50 Sounds, a personal dictionary of the Japanese language, was published in April 2021. Polly's full-length translations include Spring Garden by Tomoka Shibasaki, Where the Wild Ladies Are, which is one of my favourites, by Matsuda Aoko, and There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Chikuko Tsumura, and apologies for my pronunciation attempts. Her new book, Porn, An Oral History, will be published by Fitzgerald Editions in March 2023. And I will pop some links in the chat so you can find out more about Florrie, Polly, and the Emma Press via those. And that's enough from me, and I'm going to hand over to Polly and Florrie. Thank you both.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Georgia. It's such a pleasure to be here today, celebrating the launch of the wonderful How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart. A book which richly deserves all kinds of celebration. I sort of feel a little bit sad that we are not, both of us, surrounded by all kinds of food, but I hope that you're going to have your own kind of culinary celebration of this later, or in fact have already had it, because I know it launched actually yesterday. I've told Florrie this before, but the PDF version of the proof of How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart that I was sent was exactly 100 pages long, which meant that when I read it on my Kindle, the percentage read that showed at the bottom of the screen matched up exactly with the page number throughout, which was just so unbelievably satisfying for me. And that, I guess, to me, really feels symbolic of so many other ways in that this book brought kind of joy and satisfaction. It's really just such a wonderful read. There are some memoirs you read where it feels like the tales being related have been kind of aging inside the barrel of the writer's body, and then that barrel is cracked open at just the right time. And How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart really feels like one of those. It also seems to me amazing that such a slender book packs so much in. I don't just mean in terms of themes covered, but also the feelings evoked and the images that really linger with the reader. You know, it's one of those books I can imagine 10 different readers describing in 10 totally different ways. So I guess to begin, Florrie, I just use the word memoir mostly out of laziness, but I wanted to ask you first of all, like how you, I know it's early days for you, but how you yourself describe the book, and what you think of as being its kind of main concerns, I guess.
That's a great question, actually. I guess I would start by saying it's not the book I really intended to write. It just became a memoir out of necessity almost. And memoir, you're right, memoir is the term I would use. Yeah, I guess I would call it a memoir in essays. The original conceit was a collection of kind of travel-focused essays with lots of food in there, kind of lighthearted. And then I started, oh God, I have to write about friendship because that's like the big defining part of what made Kyoto such a central part of my 20s. It's like if I didn't write about it, it'd be like putting this big mannequin-shaped thing in a room and then writing about all the furniture around it, but then just not writing about the thing that you really needed to see. And yeah, I describe it as a memoir about friendship, heartbreak, travel. Yeah, all those themes.
Right. Those small themes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Tiny ones.
That's great. I love the idea of sort of embracing that it became something that you totally didn't imagine it to be. Because I think often being led that way is what produces the most powerful stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about, you've kind of talked a little bit about the beginning of why you first started writing it, but can you fill us in a bit on the kind of the route to publication? Because here you are now, it's a book that exists in the world. Like, how did you come to be working with the Emma Press? How did you kind of hone it into something that was send-outable, I guess?
Oh God. I can't remember if I mentioned this to you at all, actually, but so I'd been thinking about writing an essay collection for a couple of years now and kind of returning to a few core themes there and again. I'd probably jot them down, make a list, and then forget about it because I just didn't really want to start writing it because then I have to commit to it. And I'd been following the Emma Press for a while on Instagram because they published Nina, whose book I rather liked, Tiny Moons. And eventually well, if I say eventually, but they put out a call for essay collection submissions back in early 2021, I think it was. And I think a part of me looked at that and was like, if I don't do it now, I will never do it. I'm never going to sit down and write this thing. So I sat down, wrote a proposal, sent it off, and then promptly forgot about it for the next. I sent it in on the day of the deadline, which was 30th of June, promptly forgot about it for 3 months. I got an email in September saying, hey, we want to read your manuscript, congratulations. And then I was like, shit, I gotta write it. Because at that point it was only maybe 5 to 10% complete. I sort of like just, because I freelance, I'm self-employed, and I think anyone here who is self-employed knows that it is, just nonstop work or thinking about work. You don't write unless you carve out the time to write. And then the deadline for submitting the manuscript was the 30th of November. And September and October are super busy months for whatever reason. After summer, everybody gets back. And the next 60 days I spent basically working nonstop. And in the middle of that, I was like, if I don't take some time off, I will never take some time off. So I took November off and wrote for 16 hours a day until I finished. Yeah. My partner nearly threw me out of the window. It's a small apartment and I have a mechanical keyboard and it is very loud. So that at 2 a.m., you just, man.
So intense, but
yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. I think the book has, one of the things I loved about it was this real sense of intensity that it has, and so in a way it sort of makes sense to me that it would be written in such a intense period, because I think often really getting into the zone is what allows you to sort of access those memories, especially from and feelings, right, especially from quite a while back. Okay, I think this might be a good time to hear a bit if you're happy to do a reading.
Yeah, I was thinking I might read a couple of pages of the first essay, Persimmons. Trying to decide how to do this, whether to set a timer or, Polly, stop me if you're getting bored.
Okay, sure. I'm going to mute myself, but if I feel like you're going on too long, which I'm sure I won't, I'll make some wavy hand gesture.
Wavy hand gestures, great. Okay, all right. So I guess the first essay in the book, Persimmons, is it's about a persimmon tree, but it is also about friendship. And I remember making this the second essay in the book when I submitted it, because I thought I would want the title essay to start the book, as it were, and sort of, go in a sort of more chronological way. But Emma and Pema, the editors at the Emma Press, argued for Persimmons to come first. And in retrospect, I think they were right to do so, because it sets the tone, I think, for the rest of the book and what's to come. So here we go, Persimmons. Persimmon blossoms emerge in June, petite and cream-colored, as though clusters of buttery pursed lips have sprouted all over the tree. Or so I'm told. I can't recall the persimmon tree in this garden ever flowering. Bright green leaves one day, fruit the next. They seem to blink into being overnight as June's rainy season subsides, oval lumps swelling over the summer months until blushing orange in autumn, like 1,000 little suns festooning the tree. Visiting crows peck away at persimmons on the highest branches. Some ripen all too quickly, landing in fragrant, messy puddles in the undergrowth, a feast for wasps and songbirds alike. It is early October now, a warm, sunny afternoon with a dreamlike cast, and we're harvesting persimmons. The tree is still lush and green. In a few weeks, it will be bare, scattering leaves in a brilliant carpet of mottled tangerine and vermilion. She shimmies up the ladder and snips away at the fruit-laden boughs with red shears. I catch them, mostly, and prise the persimmons from the branches by their calyxes. If I close my eyes, I can still hear our peals of laughter, her yelps and curses as some fruit falls into the roof gutters. Oh, fuck. I can feel myself shaking with laughter. I look up. Her hair glints in the sun. When we have harvested close to 3/4 of the tree, we call it a day. The persimmons spill out across the veranda by the hundreds, far more than we can reasonably eat by ourselves. We'll pile them up in a corner, but for now, we make persimmon angels, arms spread, surrounded by abundance. Autumn sunshine streams in through the glass of the sliding doors. My heart catches a little, as though there's a glass splinter inside. I'm already weeping for the moment as it slips away. I'm happy. It hurts. I think this is where I'm supposed to be. This is how I remember her still. Luminous, laughing, haloed by sunlight and sunset-colored fruit. I spent 2 years in Kyoto during my 20s, sharing a house with a friend I'd known from university in London. She contacted me a few months after I arrived in Japan to ask if I wanted to work remotely with her at her current job and also move in with her. She would be asking her housemate, whom she couldn't stand, to leave. I didn't know her particularly well, but I knew I enjoyed being around her, admired her relentless drive, her sardonic wit, and colorful stories, her taste in ceramics, her depth of knowledge on traditional art and culture, and I would have jumped at any opportunity to leave my job in Tokyo. It made sense. I had a way out of the retail job I hated, and she would have a colleague to share her increasing workload with and a new housemate. The job itself was mundane, customer services, consisting largely of emails to and from clients wanting to travel to Japan on guided tours. But I genuinely loved the products I sold, and for all their flaws, the company management had a real knack for attracting good-hearted people with fascinating backgrounds and creating an unusually tight-knit working culture where everyone could more or less understand the role they played and why it was essential. In other words, even though it was poorly paid and I was ultimately replaceable, I knew the work really meant something to the company, and it provided, at least initially, that sense of purpose I craved. It was the only full-time position I ever actually wanted, so I was determined to make it work. Adding to the novelty of the situation was the house I shared with her. It was a single-story building ensconced in the northeastern suburbs below Mount Hiei, more of a hill than a real mountain, and rented from a couple living in upstate New York. From the nearest station, you made your way through a shotengai up a hill, through a few slender unnamed lanes and turnings, before arriving at a nondescript-looking house encircled by a modest garden space, which for the most part lay unused. The waist-high gate to the property tended to stay ajar, more there to mark a boundary than provide security. Like many houses in Japan, it was poorly insulated, with thin walls that shook and rattled whenever an earthquake shuddered through the city. The floorboards creaked and complained, especially in the deafening silence of 3 a.m. when I stumbled my way to the toilet on the other side of the house. Summer invariably saw several cockroaches the size of golf balls scuttling across the kitchen floor, and winter had us huddling close to fume-spewing kerosene heaters, which only ever warmed the room to a tepid temperature at best. None of that mattered. I loved the house, and as far as I remember, she did too. My bedroom window faced the front garden and its unruly carpet of weeds, and I could see Mount Hiei most days, mist clinging to its silhouette in the mornings. At the other end of the house, the kitchen overlooked the spacious and endlessly abundant community garden, where local residents planted all manners of delicious things year-round: bitter gourd, cucumber, aubergine, daikon. And beyond the surrounding suburbs, more mountains lay in the distance. I hadn't realized I missed looking at the vast bowl of sky above until I left Tokyo and its tall buildings, and there were many days that my heart would ache with pleasure just looking out the kitchen window. What I loved most about this house, though, was the persimmon tree. At the heart of the house was a room lined with tatami mats, which my friend used as her bedroom. It was bordered by rengawa, a kind of veranda, an L-shaped meter-wide corridor running along the edges of this room, and looked out onto the central garden. A few pine trees and bushes dotted a space covered mostly with grasses. On the right, a Japanese maple extended its spidery branches over a petite nandina bush that had dark glossy leaves and bright red berries in winter. To the left, the persimmon tree. Relatively young and sprightly, a knobbly lichen and moss-furred trunk stretching languorously towards the sky. It had rarely been pruned, and it towered above the roof, ending in a spray of skinny branches at its crown, like a halo of flyaway baby hair. Despite growing up in a tropical country, I thought I'd learned about seasons from a few years in the UK. But the persimmon tree showed me how little I understood. I'd never taken the time to observe how plants morph and shift over a year, how they can take on a dozen different faces and still delight you week after week. Spring begins with bright yellow-green leaves that darken as summer approaches and fruit forms. Autumn breathes shades of fire, rust, bronze into the leaves, which blanket the ground as the cold creeps in. Persimmons tend to remain long after the leaves have fallen, slender branches weighed down by clusters of fruit slowly rotting and shriveling out of reach. You leave some behind for the birds, kimamori, as a way of ensuring good harvests and fortunes for the coming year. And winter, eventually, outlines its skeleton in inches of settled snow. So the cycle goes. How would you describe something you've never eaten before? I had no frame of reference for this fruit. A just-right persimmon off our tree was sweet, crisp, honey-like. When its flesh ripened even further, becoming soft and pulpy, it tasted like an autumn mango. Hints of toasted brown sugar and dates and a dash of cinnamon. It tasted like the sound of a clarinet, silky, mellow, and warm. I assumed all persimmons could be eaten straight off the tree. I didn't know that hundreds of varieties existed, or that they fell broadly into astringent and non-astringent types. Later, I found out the hard way that an underripe astringent persimmon tastes like 1,000 green bananas and turns your tongue into a shag rug for half an hour. It was the first time I had lived up close with an actual fruit tree. The autumn bounty felt miraculous and impossible. These mounds of beautiful imperfect fruits with their bruises and webs of blemishes, so different from perfectly square supermarket persimmons suffocating in their plastic prisons. Without any effort, the tree simply grew, year after year, a gift unasked for. It felt a bit like my life: a job, a friend, a tree, a roof over my head, all these things I hadn't asked for, but had received like a benediction. It took years to stop feeling guilty for all this good fortune.
Thank you so much, Rory. That was an absolutely beautiful reading of
Thank
an
you.
absolutely beautiful passage. And I can see people in the chat are feeling really similar.
Oh.
There's so many questions that I want to ask you now, and I don't know which to go for, but maybe just being reminded again of the incredible kind of poetic literary language that you use so successfully throughout, but maybe particularly when talking about food and things, I'm thinking to, well, the fact that you work often as a food journalist, and also what you said about initially conceiving this book as kind of an essay, a collection of essays about food. And I'm just wondering what it was like to sort of transition from writing journalism to being this space, being given this space where sort of nominally you can write whatever you want, but I suppose also comes with its own series of pressures. And how was that sort of transition for you?
Ooh, difficult. And that's why I think I needed to be writing for a full month without working on anything else. I do food writing, so kind of like features on a particular topic, but I also do stuff like copywriting, which is a lot of fluff, as I think anyone who's worked in copywriting knows. There's a lot of knee-jerk descriptions of things as tasting very succulent or fantastic or what have you, and it's very hard to initially, I think, leave that all behind. You start resorting to lazy shorthand descriptions, and it takes a lot of writing and rewriting to kind of throw that out the window before you can get to, okay, how is this not going to sound like ad copy for a local tourism board? Yeah. A lot of time and a lot of not reading features.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the kind of willfully depriving yourself of any
for that
kind of
absolutely
makes a lot of sense. But clearly in some way, that has been a sort of a training for you.
Mm-hmm.
It is also, so.
No, absolutely. You're right. It is training in the sense that writing as a day job helps you pump out the words. So in terms of sheer word count, you can push it out. But I guess the primary difference with features and copywriting is you kind of have a sense of how it's supposed to look at the end of it. There's a lead, there's an exposition, you add the quote from your subject, and there is some kind of pithy ending to an 800 to 1,000 word article. But there's no guidance like that for an essay, as you well know. Each one takes such a different form, and it'll often only yield it after you've had to write it about 10 times or had to, yeah,
absolutely right. And there's two things, isn't there? There's the structure of the individual essay, and then there's also how all of those essays fit
together
and interact, and how closely related should they be. Something I really enjoyed about your book was how the essays work as standalone pieces, and yet they all kind of interact in a way that obviously forms a kind of coherent narrative, and also sheds, but not so kind of tight or coherent that it rules out them kind of casting each other in different interesting lights. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I didn't set out to make that happen, but I'm glad it turned out that way.
Polly and I were talking a little bit before the webinar started, and I said, "Oh my God, have you deliberately dyed your hair
to look like a persimmon tree?"
Like, no, it's a totally
complete coincidence. The stylist decided to add a little orange to the pink, and this is where I've ended up.
Now matches her book cover. I wanted to actually ask you a question about another one of your professional.
Oh gosh, yeah, please go ahead.
So, one of my favorite essays was about tour guide, your work as a tour guide.
Mhm.
I just found it, I could empathize with it so much, and it was also so kind of revelatory. Having never done anything like that, I can't even give a tour to my friends, really.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
And that's about where it stopped. But what it made me think about is like the relationship between that and writing, and telling stories, and and obviously obviously I can imagine in the tour guiding there is an element of like churning the words out in oral sense, and incorporating lots of fluff, but there is also that kind of, you learn a talent for fluidity and story spinning and all of that kind of stuff, I imagine. Like, I guess I'm wondering how much you conceive of that as having kind of shaped you as a storyteller.
That is a really good question. I'd say that's very conceivable, in that you have to condense what, like 800 years of history or whatever into something that, your clients won't get bored of after 5 minutes. If you start going too deep, people's attention start wandering. So you have to get and every tour guide has a very different style of doing it. And some people are better with, making history engaging than others. I tended to focus on slightly more salacious details because I'm not a lecturer. And I know slightly salacious details, like the one about the Golden Pavilion, tends to hook people's interest. So in that sense, yeah, I can definitely see the link between the tour guiding and storytelling. It does help you shape you. So something I learned from my previous managing director, I mean, he'd been in the business for like at least 10, 20 years. But before each tour, before each like 10-day tour that he'd do, he would sit down and write a narrative for every single day, like describing how he wanted the day to go and what he wanted to communicate to his clients on the trip. And I think that's a really, really good way of honing your storytelling as well.
Wow,
that's
cool. Did you ever try doing that?
So before every tour, and I only did really the 2 to 6 day tours, but yes, I would sit down and go through the schedule and go through every single anecdote, every single story I needed to tell, and refresh myself with it.
That's incredible. Wow. Thank you. Okay, so one of the things that I so appreciated, and I'm sure other readers either have so appreciated or will so appreciate about the book, was how seriously it takes friendship. And I really, I related so strongly to the descriptions of the kind of all-consumingness of living with someone else, and also kind of the feeling yourself to be the less cool half of a very intense pair, and I guess I wanted to ask you kind of, do you think that, obviously this friendship took place in Kyoto in your 20s. Do you see the sort of the intensity of those bonds as having something to do with youth, or is that sort of an aspect of how you are? And I guess maybe I want to open that question up a bit further, actually. Like, do you feel that a lot of what you describe in the book with your relationship to Kyoto could only have happened in the way that it did because you were young, or is that a misguided way of thinking about it? I'm asking this question kind of partly out of selfish motivations, because it's something that I have quite figured out with my stuff with Japan.
No, I can see that. Part of it is definitely youth, being in one's mid-20s. So the other part, as you prompted, I think, has to do with Japan and the whole being not from Japan, and so consequently having a less wide range of people to necessarily click with. And when I moved to Kyoto, I think she was like possibly the only person I was really friends with. I had like a couple other acquaintances in the city, but she was really the only person I knew. And when you have that, like, she, my life kind of orbited around her. for better or for worse, mostly probably for worse in retrospect, and this is why the book exists. But I think this is not a situation that is necessarily, it's not unique to Japan. It's not unique to youth either, but I do think it comes out of proximity. Than the situation in which we were placed. So it's probably why these sorts of dramas take place in workplaces or colleges or dorms, because you have that confined space and that environment in which you're constantly crossing paths, and that kind of breeds it's a nice breeding ground for drama and conflict.
I don't know why when you said that I immediately thought of Terrace House.
Oh God, yes, Terrace House, that's exactly it.
But you know, like I kind of explain that to Western friends sometimes, and I'll say, you know, it's like about people living in the same house, and they'll say like, oh, so they're not allowed to leave, and it's like, no, they're allowed to leave. It's like, what? So they're housemates. It's like, yeah, that's basically the story, and yet it does seem to kind of generate these really intense connections.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. Just because you can leave the house doesn't mean that, you know, you don't end up spending time in the house anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask you another question, which you've just prompted, but I just want to say publicly, please do start adding questions to the Q&A, because we're coming up to question time. So yeah, and anything, don't be shy. Otherwise you will have to listen to me asking Dory endless questions. So can you talk us through a little bit about any difficulties, concerns, challenges, joys that came specifically from the fact that you were writing about Japan?
Ooh, gosh. Specifically about Japan. I think it would make sense to it would make sense for me, I guess, to bring up at this point one major motivation for writing this book, which was as it was turning into a memoir, I realized, okay, this adds another layer of importance in that, as you know, Polly, a lot of memoirs about Japan are by white men. And I didn't want this to be another one of those. Well, because it's not, I can't write that for really obvious reasons. unless I've been, you know, I had a really skilled plastic surgeon of some kind. But I wanted also as a, I guess, I if it's not too horribly pompous to say, as someone with an academic background in Japanese language, I didn't want to write something that would fall into the usual very tired tropes about living in Japan and writing about Japan. I won't name specific authors, but I think we all know who they are. So I think part of the proposal I wrote for the Yama Press was this book does not contain bamboo forests or geishas. I mean, and you know, it does mention them, but only insofar as I really dislike them. I really dislike that particular bamboo forest in Kyoto because it's so crowded all the damn time. But it was a huge source of joy to write about the things that I really loved about Japan that weren't necessarily topics that I think books on Japan cover very much, like writing about like a personal experience of a tea session, for example, or rain.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I loved reading what you wrote about the experience of sort of your Japanese being of a fluency that, given the way you look, you kind of are on the borderline between passing as Japanese and not, even when you're speaking, and kind of slipping in and out of that sort of, oh, she's Japanese, oh no, she's not. And
it's that uncanny valley thing, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
I've thought before about what that must be like, but sort of, yeah, hearing you talk about it was really fascinating.
It comes in, really, it just like in a small thing. So my partner is white, and every time we go out, people talk to me, never to him. They don't look him in the eye, which is the complete opposite, of course. If I'm in like the UK or wherever else, they'll look at him and not at me. So sometimes what I do is I deliberately pretend not to speak any Japanese and let him do all the ordering. So they're forced to interact with him and not me.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's so interesting that the sort of the prevalence and the prevalence of memoirs about Japan written by white men, but also like the hunger for them in terms of the market is what astounds me, because it just seems it's not just, my problem with them is not just that they're written by white men, but that there's no sort of acknowledgement of that within them, and no kind of like, no understanding that this experience is unique to this like privileged group
of
right?
people.
And so, yeah, it's not just, obviously, I'm saying the obvious now, but it's not just that you've written from a different perspective. It's like that perspective utterly defines not everything, not just everything you say, but also the things that you would want to talk about. I feel like I'm quickly entering the realm of total trite.
No, not at all.
So maybe this is the time to turn to the Q&A. I have a feeling that some of you have put your questions in the chat, which I will probably get around to looking at, but if I don't, please do repost them in the Q&A. Okay, right. First one from Yasmin. When you were writing the book, how did you manage the emotions that come from remembering the events that led to it, and any tips that helped with that? That's a really great question.
Manage. Manage emotions. No, I actually I spent maybe 30% of the writing time like just typing and sobbing, and there was a lot of that. So I don't know that there was managing of emotions so much as there was letting it out and then continuing to write. Yeah, because that's just kind of how it is, I think. And it helps not to write in public when you do that. I think that's very important.
Writing in public.
As in the cafe.
Yeah, helps not cry.
No. It helps to not be in a cafe when you're writing about the things that make you cry. And now I'm very, on the edge of trite, but
Yeah, I get that. I've done quite a lot of translating in cafes and thought I was going to be fine, and then find myself crying.
Yeah. Just like
thanks for that answer. Maybe I can just kind of ask a follow-up question to that. Like, do you sort of feel, if this isn't too personal, do you feel in a sense that the writing did help with some of the healing process? Absolutely,
definitely. Yeah. I think I've joked to people that it's like 5 years of therapy in a month, which like just concentrating all of it and suddenly having to like spend the entire month looking at all these things I didn't want to think about. I'm like, oh my God. And it helped a lot, I think, to write the essay and figure out how to come to terms with like all these friendships that had kind of disintegrated, and be okay with the fact that they had disintegrated.
Thank you. Okay, we've got loads of questions now.
Oh God.
So this is from
Ooh.
Given the emphasis on friendships, relationships, and the idea of not having a cultural vocabulary to talk about losing friendship, do you find modern terms or labels like love bombing, toxic, useful?
I've never used the term love bombing. It's toxic. I've definitely come across a lot or used, but there I think they can. And this is the cop-out answer, I think, but they probably can be useful up to a certain point. But there is also the problem of and I think if you are as terminally online as I am, seeing people. I've just revealed myself to spend too much time on Twitter, but for people being very quick to label anything outside their experience or what they think their experience should be as toxic, or repurposing or co-opting this language to suit their own purposes. So it can be useful, but it can also be very easily manipulated or twisted to serve your own ends. And so the answer is, I guess it depends.
Yeah. Thank you. Could you tell us a bit about what the editing process was like, please?
Ooh, editing process was like, let's see. So one of Pema's main bits of feedback, because lucky for me, they really enjoyed the manuscript. Fun fact, the 6-part essay, How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart, was first written in the second person. So that the main piece of advice there was to rewrite it all in the first person, which I am glad I did. The interesting part, I think, that they were very perceptive in that writing in the second person often allows you to remove yourself from the experience and keep yourself at a distance, I think. So as though everything you're writing about is happening to somebody else. And I think I had to do that while I was writing to make it easier to deal with. Because if I was writing about me as a you, then writing about me, running away sobbing when I met my friend again for, several months later, wouldn't feel quite so bad. But in order to make the book work, then I had to take ownership by writing in the first person. So kind of wrestled with that a bit, but eventually caved, and that was good advice from Pema.
I love that idea of writing it first in the second person in order to enable its birth, and then to grow it up into the I'm just translating a piece of writing in the second person in Japanese, which is very, very unusual, and she says
that is unusual,
right? It's all like blah blah blah. And the author says that she wrote it in that way, so it's about the experiences of a young mother. And she wrote it because she was going through it at the time, and she felt like when she wrote it in the second person, it was like someone was addressing her, and therefore that she was being sort of protected or like looked over in some was so kind of hearing what you said makes so
yes
sense, but like for the first bit, it's like you've got someone else to hold your hand.
Exactly. That's a fantastic way of I look forward to that translation.
Thank you. I don't know if anything will come of it. Okay.
Everyone here, make it happen.
Okay, so many questions to choose from here. Right. Do you feel, this is from Jenny, do you feel that the way that the friendship developed and ended has damaged and altered you? I'm going to say damaged and or altered you here.
Oh yeah, that is it is, I think, as with anything that happens to you, is a very it fundamentally just shapes who you are. So who I am today is also a direct result of how that friendship developed and ended. Is probably why this book also exists. if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, one from Apurva. Lovely words, Flori. Looking forward to reading your book. How did you make the decision about what memories of Kyoto to include? Also on the decision behind how to order your essays in the book without letting it overwhelm you?
Interesting. So the second one, I didn't really have as much of an issue with figuring out how to order the essays in the book, partly because aside from like Persimmons, which kind of anchors the whole thing, the rest of it kind of takes place more or less in chronological order. So the 6-part essay. The rest I kind of slotted in as they felt right. This is not a very, I'm sorry, this is the most hippy dippy woo woo kind of, but I just did what felt right in terms of picking an order. Regarding decision, what memories of Kyoto include? Being quite ruthless with cutting stuff out. I guess an addendum to the editing process. The other piece of advice Emma and Pema gave me was to add more blood. Like I had written kind of around. So this friend actually that I had written about, I had not originally included very much detail about her, if at all, or our shared memories together. I had kind of alluded to a lot of it, but I just hadn't written it in any concrete detail. But one of them is just like, it's the troubles of writing about other people in your life or even not in your life. Yeah, right. And you know this, Polly, like even when you're not naming them, you're still creating a version of them in the text that they can't necessarily answer to because you're no longer friends with them. And then it's a difficult part of can I be responsible for doing this? And so eventually, I guess the way I resolved that was to include the aspects of them that I had celebrated most. Even if things had disintegrated towards the end, then there were still good parts of that friendship.
Yeah, that's really nice. Thank you. Okay. I'm not going to get through all of these questions, I think, so I'm just
oh God, so many.
Okay. My question, this is from Lee Tran Lam. My question is, obviously, your experience were foundational to the writing of the book, but I'm curious as to whether you delved into much research for it. Did you feel like you had to know everything there was to know about persimmons or words for Japanese rain, for instance, or was research a welcome relief from having to constantly search your memory back?
Yes. Oh my God, yes. There was so much procrastinating on writing the hard bits to go look at all the rain vocabulary, for instance. And I remember actually, and one of the initial drafts of the rain essay included a very, very long paragraph on rain words. And my friend Athena, I don't know if she's here or not, but if she is, hi. She looked at it and went, okay, yeah, you need to cut half of this. I know what you're trying to do, but this is now you're just showing off. And sometimes, this is exactly what you need to hear. Because like sometimes you're just showing up, all right, so stop at 3 or 4, whatever it is. Yeah, no, so yes, I definitely went deep diving into a lot of these different subjects, and probably not very much of it shows up in the essays, but it's there somewhere. I did learn something. Sorry, this just came to me the other day, but I was reading about persimmons again the other day, and there's a particular GI brand of dried persimmons down in Shimane Prefecture, and one of the main criteria for them to meet the standards for shipment is that they have to be as soft as human earlobes. I know. And I looked at that, I was like, whose earlobes are we talking about here?
Right.
Who was the standard they used?
Yeah, look, you've got the title for your next book.
Oh yeah, soft as human eardrums.
Oh, amazing. Okay, well, we've already found out that you have written this 16 hours a day, but we've got a question here. When is your favorite time for writing? When you're not writing?
Oh,
you're not under pressure at that time.
Probably like past midnight, unfortunately.
Oh.
And this is why I don't make a good employee.
So this was covered in your essays, right? The sort of night owlness as opposed to the tendency. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe a good question to end on is, what is your next writing project, if you have one lined up, and how did you do it?
Oh.
Or maybe, I mean, that's phrased very definitively. But even if you don't have anything set in stone, do you have any ideas of things that you would like, the kind of directions you'd like your writing to go in the future? Or
nothing definitive, I think. I would like to turn I guess the lens on a little bit on the Japanese travel industry, just because it's I mean, do you like work novels? I love work novels, like where they explore something just so niche, and I think it's why I became a part-time journalist, because I am really nosy and I just like hearing about people's jobs. So then, like, the unusual or strange jobs, or I think yesterday I was grilling somebody about their international taxation work at KPMG, because it was fascinating, because I don't do it and I don't have to do it. Yeah.
What you said about work novels made me wonder, can you see yourself writing fiction in the future? Is that something you would rule out or not?
I've always wanted to know how to write fiction. Like, how do people sit down and make stuff up? I don't understand at all, but I would love to be able to do it. I've always joked that I can't write fiction because I'm a really bad liar. So maybe I should try and be a better liar. Yeah. But no, whatever writing projects I have are mainly kind of work related. I am working on a magazine with a couple of friends at the moment, and helping edit stuff, and
a magazine.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, no, I did not set it up. No, I don't know if David's here, but David set it up, and David and Sugai-san. It is a Japan craft and craft focus magazine, I suppose you'd say. And the entire ethos behind it is to tell stories about Japan and around, using this with the same approach that I take to the book, i.e. not without exotifying, but really, diving into stories as, interesting stories that don't necessarily conform to, outside stereotypes of what this country is.
Yeah, a great word.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well,
thank you.
It's 5 to 11. I could carry on talking with Flori forever, but
yeah,
looks like the people in the chat could as well, but I think maybe wrap up. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for turning up.
I'm just coming in to add thanks to both of you. It's been such a brilliant morning listening to you, and obviously I've already read this so many times. I think it's testament to not how good the book is, but also how interesting this morning been. I'm like, oh, I need to read it again now. There's Flori, there's some lovely comments in the chat, and I'll leave you to look over that, but I just want to steal one, which I think is a brilliant way of ending. which is Ali Chan said, I would totally read Soft as Human Earlobes. So I think that's sums up.
2024. Oh God.
So thank you again, Polly, for sharing that so wonderfly, and thank you,
Polly,
for being so lovely to work with, and especially for choosing to submit to us. I'll close it. It's such an abrupt ending now. Thank you everyone for your really stimulating questions too, and I will look forward to going back to the book. And those of you that haven't already read it, the international post is now working again, so I'll be back in the office on Tuesday sending orders out. If you've been listening today and thinking frustrating, I ordered that on pre-order a month ago and I've still not had any sign. We had a terrible issue that our Royal Mail in the UK wasn't able to accept international orders, but it's now back on, so I will be posting out your book to you on Tuesday. So thank you again, Polly and Florrie, and I hope you both enjoy the rest of your day and evening.
Thank you very much to both of you and everybody. Yeah, I hope to see all of you at some point.
And good luck. Good luck with the Tokyo launch, Florrie, too.
Oh Lord, yeah, it's tomorrow. Good Lord.
Enjoy that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye.